Hi, this is Patrick Henry, the CEO of QuestFusion with the Real Deal What Matters. I'm here today with Klyn Elsbery. Klyn and I are both San Diego locals, but we actually hadn't met each other over the last, whatever, I've been here 15 years. But she actually came across through a network, mutual network acquaintance. Found out that we actually have a lot of friends in common, so, small world. Klyn is from Iowa. I'm from Missouri, so we obviously know what it likes to drive for hours and just see cornfields. But that's where a lot of good entrepreneurs come from that background. So Klyn's a successful entrepreneur. She's built her own recruiting business called Landmark Makers, and very successful recruiting model. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But how we actually kind of got acquainted even more is she sent me a link to a speaking engagement, a Sue Talk, which is kind of like a TED Talk, where she talked about overcoming adversity and some of the things she's gone through. So in 2014, after being forced to quit her professional recruiting career, at least temporarily, due to excessive hospitalizations from complications from cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease that you have from birth, Klyn was confined to a wheelchair and her lung function plummeted to 40%. And I don't even know how to put that into proper terms, but it's very bad. After a 2-week hospital stay, just one of 5 that year, she set off on a 6-week road trip across the United States to visit friends and family because she wasn't sure if she was going to see them again. Out of that, you did some things. Why don't you take us on the journey, kind of went on the road and kind of what happened at that point?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure where my life was going to go and if it was going to go on. And the backstory there is it was all because there was this drug that was coming out that was thought to halt the progression of cystic fibrosis, because when you're born with something that's genetic and it is a fatal condition, it's almost a downward spiral, and this drug thought to halt the progression, but I couldn't get approved, and the price of it was $259,000 a year, and my insurance didn't want to pay for it, the drug manufacturer didn't have any solutions for me, and so I was like trapped in this middle syndrome, watching my health continuously decline.
Yeah.
And that was really what started the whole movement behind using my recruiting background and reaching out to people who I thought would be able to make a difference and help other people get the drug and get access to the drug. And so the journey started actually on the road trip to see the friends and the family.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had this idea of I don't want to die. I don't want it to be over.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to do. My back was against the wall.
Yeah.
And so the only skills that I had that I could pull from was reaching out to people and getting the message out there and just seeing what would happen, because when you have nothing to lose.
Sure.
So
tell us, she was actually able to finally connect with Lester Holt, NBC Nightly News.
Yeah.
And you were on that program with him. So tell me about kind of how that happened and the events that led up to that.
So they actually reached out to me. It was Ann Thompson. She's an Emmy award-winning producer, just brilliant woman. And she reached out to me and said she got a hold of the story and wanted to know if I'd be open to doing an interview. And I'm like, absolutely, of course I want to do this interview, fangirling. And we kept having to postpone it because the last reason we had to postpone it was because the Pope actually came to town. So they couldn't meet me because of the Pope. And it worked out well, because by the time they could meet me, I was hospitalized again. And so they took the news cruise, and they took it all the way to the hospital, and they shot everything in the hospital. And within just a few minutes of it airing to 10 million viewers, the drug was magically pushed through, the paperwork was suddenly found, the manufacturer was suddenly willing to help. And I'm not saying that I was the catalyst, but it was just really ironic how everything came together in the last
kind of
10 minutes of that interview.
Yeah.
And the drug was on my doorstep, and the doorstep of up to, I think they estimated 900 other people with CF.
Wow.
Within California within 6 days.
That's crazy.
So suddenly, just miraculous.
So you were like an activist of sorts, and really kind of drove that thing. So, as we talked about off camera, one of the things that's critically important to you with your health is to exercise regularly, and maybe that doesn't halt the progression of the disease, but at least keeps you healthy.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about that, how you kind of were started. I guess you were teaching Zumba and being a personal trainer, and kind of what happened then.
So it all started to funnel. At the time, I was teaching Zumba, I was training people, but I was just really bored. But I couldn't really jump into a career or do much because I spend so much time in the hospital.
Sure.
And the one drug that's said to help me isn't available. So that was kind of my fallback, what I'm going to do in my spare time. And after the drug became available for me, I started thinking, well, what else is out there? And habit is actually, I wrote a book, and habit is one of the chapters in the book. And working out has always been a habit of mine that I think has led me to the level of health I can enjoy.
Sure.
And a big part of that is, especially when I deal with a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs, I mean, if you're not working out and you're not taking care of your body, then you're not taking care of your mind. And if your mind isn't sharp, then what's happening to your company?
Sure.
And so I've personally always had a very healthy habit with exercise. And it started off just to save my life, but now I realize exercise saves the lives of everybody. It's not
Sure.
just if you have a condition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is called I Am, fill in the blank, The Untold Story of Success. So definitely pick this up. Is this available on Amazon?
It is,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm only halfway through it, but it is quite a read, and I'm very excited to continue on with it. But one of the things, that Klyn is obviously a specialist and expert in the recruiting field is building teams. And one of the key things when you're building a company, and I talk about this in Plan, Commit, Win, team building is really the foundation of building a great company. Now, if you're a solopreneur and you can have kind of a network of freelancers, different story, but normally you have to build a team to build a really big company. So talk to us a little about that and kind of your unique approach on recruiting with landmark makers and kind of what you do there and how you help entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, I worked in an agency my entire recruiting career before I had to take a step back in 2014. And I just always kept thinking there's got to be a better way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't make sense that I'm competing to send a bunch of resumes to a client, and I'm competing against my team, and I'm competing against 8 other companies. And so naturally, as a salesperson, what am I going to do? I'm going to send you as many people as I possibly can, hoping that you're going to pick one.
Sure.
And then I'm going to collect my fee. And then I thought, well, what if I come at it as if I work for your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm working for your company, I get to know you. I get to know your unique situation. I get to know why your company, the career itself, the leaders you already have in place, why it's a place people want to work. And then I said, why don't I find somebody for that and create a customized process for you to be able to do what I'm doing, so if you never want to use another recruiting agency, you never have to, because now you're empowered. And it kind of creates a talent magnet for you where candidates start showing up more.
Okay.
And they apply more, so you have better retention with your ads. And then you have less turnover because everybody's happier, and you're actually getting the quality of the people you want because you don't have to sift through 80 resumes yourself.
Right.
And so that was really how that idea was born. And it really came out of what happened with the book is I started studying high achievers, and I started studying entrepreneurs and CEOs, and they all said that one of the problems in their business was finding the right people on their teams.
Yeah.
And that was something my career had always done. It just never clicked for me to take it from some other step.
Yeah.
And through the interviews and through some of the stories that they told, it naturally had to happen.
Yeah. I think another kind of key element that you cover in the book is just obviously with CF, overcoming adversity. And I mean, that's something that's been kind of a cornerstone of my personal life as well as my career. Some things through my own, ridiculousness, some things just adversity happens. So, but, talk to us a little bit about that in terms of not only your own entrepreneurial journey and your own life journey, but these interviews that you did with these other very successful people, kind of what were some of their experiences, kind of the commonalities there in terms of that overcoming adversity.
Yeah, so the thing that I go back to is my adversity is spending not to be dramatic, but most of my life in a hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent more Christmases and holidays in the hospital than I have at home with friends and family.
But you're a living miracle. The fact
Yeah.
that you're the age that you are, and you know, you've got this. We all have a terminal illness, and we're all going to die.
We're all going to get hit by a car tomorrow.
Yeah, but this is serious. I mean, since you were a little kid,
it's a
you knew
legit
that
thing.
the end was going to be much sooner than for most people.
And I told you earlier off camera, like, I dropped out of college because I didn't think I'd live long enough to pay off the student loan debt.
Yeah.
And so when you come to such dramatic grips with what your life means, you start to see patterns in other people's lives because we're all connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think my story was something worth sharing for the longest time because I love high achievers. I love entrepreneurs. I love CEOs. I love people in the investment community who they have these businesses and they're a pillar of character for the community and they have these values and they're authentic and they're genuine people. And at the end of the day, you know, business life happens and let's say somebody important in their team walks out or, you know, they had a really expensive month and they're not sure if they can float payroll, you know, that struggle.
Yeah.
And through my interviews with people, like, we all have a dark days of our lives where we're sitting on the floor. Maybe the lights are about to be turned on or off. Maybe you're not sure if you can. One guy wasn't sure if he could feed his dog and thought about getting rid of his dog.
Yeah.
And I started really thinking, like, how is that any different from wondering if I'll be able to feed myself soon?
Yeah.
And I don't mean feed as in, like, get food. I mean, like, am I going to need a feeding tube soon?
Yeah.
And the reality is like, his pain was real. You know, like, he couldn't bring himself to take that next step for who knows how long he sat it there on the floor. And I didn't know if I could take the next step to get out of the hospital bed and start working out. You know, and so it doesn't matter the severity of the pain, it's still real, and it's real for them in that moment.
Yeah.
And so the book chronicled the deepest, darkest days of some of the most successful people out there and said, what was that deep, dark day?
Yeah.
And then I related it back to what a deep, dark day is like with terminal illness.
Yeah.
Because we all have that bond towards human achievement.
Yeah.
And that's the real story.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to encapsulate. And then that, when you start studying human achievement actively, then you got to put what you study to work, right? You have to actually prove it's an idea. And that was how my recruiting company was born, is actually taking these patterns and applying it to real life.
Okay.
And so it all just kind of manifested and fed into itself. And it didn't start out, I didn't have a business plan, I didn't have a journey written out. It just kind of flew naturally together.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating because, you know, I think about kind of my own life, but also, you know, you run across so many people in your life and everybody experiences adversity. And when it happens, successful people seem to power through it. I mean, there's always a setback. It always puts you back on your heels. It's always emotionally difficult.
Yeah.
And you assess and maybe you have some regret, maybe you do some course correction, whatever is required. But the successful people move on from that. They learn from it and move on from it, whereas people that are less successful or maybe don't achieve as much, it blows them up.
They get stuck.
And then there's always about blame. It's about, you know, I hear people, you know, my age that are still blaming their parents for the way that their life is.
Yeah.
And it's the craziest thing. It just, I don't have any... I mean, I can't even kind of comprehend that, but it happens all the time, every day. And, you know, I was fortunate enough kind of in my 20s doing a lot of personal development, things like that, and I've written some articles about that. But I think that kind of ability to take adversity and overcome it is really important. So
Absolutely.
Kind of like when you were in the kind of darkest days, what was it? What was the catalyst that kind of made you get up and made you kind of move forward from that experience?
Wow. Dozens of interviews, probably 100 at this point actually, and I've never been asked that. So my darkest day was at one point I was doing really well with where I was. Let's back up a little bit. I had a 6-figure career. I bought a house at 23.
Yeah.
Like, for a college dropout, having a house at 23 and a 6-figure career with a corner office.
That's awesome.
I'm okay with these odds.
Yeah.
And I had to give it all up. And I was watching my health decline, and there was a point when I was in a wheelchair, and I was visiting my family in Dallas, Texas, and my lung function wasn't high enough to fly back to California because it was too dangerous, and I didn't have insurance in Dallas, so I didn't want to be stuck with a $200,000 medical bill.
Yeah.
And so I remember we took my dog to the vet and said the dog was sick, just so that way we could get antibiotics from the vet that were affordable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The dog wasn't sick. The dog did not take bad antibiotics, not animal cruelty, I promise. I just wanted the medics then so I could hopefully get back on a flight. And I remember taking a phone call from a couple of people, and they just kind of asked, like, what was I really working for in life? Mm-hmm. And if I don't stop where I'm at and, like, digging my heels in, all the money in the world isn't going to mean anything. Like, what is the purpose? What's the significance?
Sure.
Not just the success. And I quit. And I just gave up, you know, the whole, I want to live in a mansion, I want to do this, I want to do that, you know, like, all the things that don't really matter in life.
Yeah.
I had to come to terms with that because that was what my life was about.
Yeah.
Was how much could I keep up with the Joneses and impress everyone around me?
Mm-hmm.
How did my life look as opposed to how did my life feel?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And my darkest day, I just remembered sitting there and cashing out my investments and everything like that, and knowing that, like, I didn't know what was next, but that I may never have, and I had to go on disability for a while, and it was just the thought of, like, wow, I'm 23 and I've lived everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the end of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought me the most out of it is love, the one thing I didn't think I needed. And it was my mom just kind of, like, holding my hand and, like, first of all, when you've got 40% lung function, you can't cry. Because when you cry, you cough. And then you're reminded that you have 40% lung function and you keep coughing. And so it becomes this huge ordeal.
Yeah.
And my mom would just sit there and, like, just hold me at 23, you know, and just, like, let me cry and let me get out all that anger and that frustration and that why me pity party that we go through sometimes. Yeah. And then at the end, she's like, are you finished? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what are you going to do with your life? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. And she took me to the gym. And that was probably the weirdest thing for a mom to do. Mm-hmm. But I think that's what saved my life. And, you know, then my dad was there for me, and he was he's still a very loving man. And, like, he was there to, like, coach me and push me. And I thought this my entire life I had to live up to my dad's expectations because he's a successful sales guy. Mm-hmm. So I had to be a successful saleswoman. Mm-hmm. But then I realized when you get rid of the sales side, what is sales? It's listening to somebody else and helping them with what they want. Yeah. And all my dad wanted for me was to be happy. And so when I get rid of all this stuff that I was trying to fill my life with, an unsurmountable amount of love came rushing in. Mm-hmm. From friends, family. That's what set off on the 6-week road trip. And just, like, you get to a point where you come to alignment with who you are. Mm-hmm. And that can lead to who you can be. Yeah. And so that was what I learned the most from it. It was just the amount of love that's out there. And I didn't think I needed any of it. Because I thought I had it all.
Yeah, that's interesting. So kind of this epiphany. And so you recovered to a level where you can work now.
Yep.
You know, you kind of restarted Landmark.
Yep.
But you now kind of discovered this new potential journey, which you're on, you know, in terms of speaking engagements and things like that. So talk to me a little bit about that, kind of the I am journey and kind of where that's at and kind of what you're doing along those lines.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just love helping people. I just love people. Mm-hmm. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
If you haven't talked to one lately, do it. Like, they're wonderful. And so, like, yeah, I've been very fortunate in that I've been getting a lot of people reach out and ask me to speak for their corporations. So, you know, I'll do day trips or, you know, a couple of them in San Diego, so I'll just go and speak in front of their leadership team. Yeah. And, you know, there is that business synergy there because I own a company now, and I can talk about what it takes to create a high-performing team. But at the end of the day, the only reason a team is high-performing is because of the love and the emotion of the people on board. Yeah. And so I blend the stories of what it's like to create a company from a hospital bed. Because I'm hospitalized all the time. Like, I spent 30 days in the hospital so far this year, less than last year, but, wow, you know, it's still crazy. Something that I think about. And every time I cough, I'm like, okay, is it ready? Like, it's been too long. So it's like very entering. But so I blend a lot of what it takes to survive a terminal illness and what it takes to create a thriving business. Because you wouldn't think it, but there's synergies there. So with that company, I'm doing the speaking gigs. I'm on podcasts. I'm doing book signings.
Cool.
I love it when people reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, I read your book or I heard your podcast, and just creating that awareness that, like, I'm a person and I want to connect with you. And so everybody who's ever reached out to me, like, has gotten a personalized response. I'm not automating that stuff because I want people to know that somebody in their day-to-day cared. Because you never know where that person was when they decided to pick up a copy. And it's a heavy read. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, it's intense.
It made my boyfriend cry in the first few pages.
Yeah.
Victory. So, like, to have somebody, like, read it, quote you, and then reach out, like, they deserve that human response.
Yeah.
And I think that love for humanity is why this brand is starting to take off.
Yeah.
And just kind of gain that traction because it's new.
Yeah.
It's heavy, but it's love, but it's business.
Well, and it's also, I mean, we run into this in our business, and Amanda and I talk about this a lot, is so much of social media is just bots talking to bots.
Yeah.
And there are people that want to have a true
So
human interaction, and be social on social media, and we try to do that. I mean, I'm on Twitter, and people are shocked that I actually talk to them and give them a personalized response. It's the craziest thing. But I think, there's so much truth in that it's about that reaching to people and touching people in a special way. So, I mean, there are people that have built these, incredible franchises. Tony Robbins, probably the biggest of late, and he's been doing it for a long time. And more recently, like Brendon Burchard, doing these speaking things. So, do you feel like you're at kind of a crossroads in your career with kind of the recruiting versus kind of the being a circuit speaker and doing that, or you're kind of like balancing it and kind of you're not really sure which way you're going to go and you're kind of going with the flow?
So I think even though it's two distinct brands, I think they're so closely related. Same target market.
Yeah.
Same general thing. Same general feeling. Like finding high achievers, connecting with high achievers, introducing them to other high achievers. So it's very, very similar. So I don't think it's at a crossroads. I think it's where the most amount of need is where I dedicate my time during that week. And the great thing about having a team, I have a team, the great thing about having a team at Landmark is they're high achievers, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when you hire a bunch of high achievers? You get out of their way and let them achieve.
Yeah.
So that's freed up a lot of space to pursue this other side of it.
Yeah.
Which I'm starting to build out with other high achievers. So it's
Right.
amazing what you can do when you put a bunch of great minds in a room. And so for me, I'm passionate equally about both. I love both. Tony Robbins, he's a legend. He created this industry. I mean, I know that there's been people before him, Zig Ziglar, Wayne Dyer, I think he read Jim Rohn. So, I mean, these are the legends.
Yeah.
Brendon, I was very fortunate to hear him speak at Alchemy for the Entrepreneurs Organization. I heard him speak last year, and he's a very talented guy. He gets to the point, he gets it. So it's not that I want to be a circuit speaker. I want to go where I'm needed most and put out a similar message from both brands. And whoever identifies with what, they're able to at least capitalize on what they need the most. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Makes total sense. In fact, it's like I'd even go like a step further and say that's part of your unique value proposition is the fact that you bring that other part to the table. And a friend of mine, Brian Smith, who started Ugg Boots, a big part of his speaking engagements are really related to his entrepreneurial journey and building Ugg, and talk about a grinder. I mean, having to grind that out for years and even decades. So that's what makes you unique to potential clients, is bringing not only your personal perspective, but the business perspective, as well as kind of what you're doing from a speaking standpoint. So it makes total sense to me.
It's about, just to capitalize on that, like even when we put a candidate in front of a client, we're still putting a human being in front of a human being.
Right.
And I can't just say, you're looking for a sales rep, great. How many calls? Great, you need 100? Look, 100. It's like, why do you need 100? Where do you want your company to be? Why do you want it to be there? And what types of personality traits are you looking for to add to your team to get you to where you want to be?
Yeah.
And then you find somebody who wants to work for a startup, a smaller company,
Yeah.
and who has that same mindset. So it's more about the mindset. We say higher attitude, trained skills. So the skills
Yeah.
have to be there,
Yeah.
but we care about the attitude and the personality and the indications of a high achiever.
Yeah.
And that's no different than what I speak about. I just talk more about the hospitalizations and creating the business despite the terminal illness.
Yeah.
But it has a very synergistic tie.
No question. I mean, the team is the foundation for a successful company. I mean, when it's you and your co-founder in the garage,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have a team. But most companies, as they grow, and I talk about this in Plan, Commit, Win, you have to build that team. And it is about, if you don't hire for culture, culture will happen, and it will happen in some way that you may not want or may not expect, and then it kind of takes over on its own. So
Yeah.
having that conscious awareness of what you're trying to build and what kind of teams you're trying to build and what kind of, you know, ethics and structure and everything like that is important. And doing that consciously as part of the process of hiring is very, very important. If you're going to
Yeah.
not wake up one morning and like have, you know, 150 people and being like, what the heck, you know?
I made a zoo. I love it.
So I know that you're going to be speaking on September 16th at Alchemy from the Entrepreneurs Organization.
Yeah.
Tell our entrepreneurial audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, so very excited about that. I'll be on the stage alongside Tony Hawk, Bill Walton, Shep Gordon. So very, very excited to be at that level. And it's actually the same stage that Brendan Bouchard spoke
Awesome.
at. So it's really weird to like see him and then the next year like I'll be on that stage.
That's
you know?
fantastic.
I know I'm supposed to have like the confidence of, you know, like, oh, I do this all the time. But the reality is like, are you serious right now? Like, this
Yeah.
is so exciting. And so I was so honored that they invited me to speak. And really, it's gonna be powerful. I want my slogan to say like the best speaker you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And because I'm on a list with some pretty big people.
Yeah.
So my main focus is to really, the best way I can word this, and I've toyed with this idea so many different times, but I want my life to serve as a reminder to help other people remember why they're alive.
Yeah.
And so when you think of that, it's about creating a life plan the way you would create a business plan.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right, we could all get hit by a bus tomorrow. We're all terminal. I've heard it all, and it's true, like very, very true.
But you have a different
So,
sense of urgency
it's a
than
different
most,
sense
and
of urgency.
and when not only the way you grew up, but going through that experience of down to 40%. I mean, that's a wake up call. That's like
It's a huge wake up call.
yeah. I mean, that's like
Not
wow,
many
I better
people
get
wake
my
up after
affairs
that.
right. I better get my affairs in order type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
And we did. We went through the process of writing a will and getting
Yeah.
an attorney, and you know, like who gets my investment accounts.
yeah.
But like the thing is sometimes we get so distracted by the things that don't matter, we
Yeah.
forget what really does. And so in
Yeah.
30 minutes, that's my allotted time. In 30 minutes, I want to take the audience through a journey where they laugh, where they cry, and where at the end of it, they go home and they become a better, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a leader. And I'm going to tie it all in together between the personal side, the business side, and how they can be the best them that they can be, while sharing examples from my story, from the book, and from the creating of Landmark Makers, and just create that real, authentic human experience.
Yeah.
It
That's
might be
fantastic.
slightly above mediocre, I've heard.
I think
So.
you're going to be awesome. I'm very excited for that.
Thank you.
So we're here with Klyn Elsbery. Her book is I Am, fill in the blank, The Untold Story of Success. It's available on Amazon.com. And this has just been wonderful.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of parting tidbits, words of advice for the entrepreneurial audience out there?
All right, I can do that for you. A bird sitting on a branch is never afraid of the branch breaking because its trust is not in the branch, but in her own wings.
Awesome. I like that. So how can people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn.
Through LinkedIn? Okay.
Check the spelling of my name. It's really weird. But LinkedIn
It's
is
Klyn Elsbury, ELSBURY. And thank you so much for being
It's
on the
such
program
a
today.
blast.
This was fun. This is Patrick Henry, the CEO of QuestFusion with the Real Deal What Matters.